Hi everyone, this is Sharan here. Welcome to my channel. The topic that we are going to see today is F-test in statistics. So the F-test is commonly used to compare the variance between two different groups. So let's take a simple example and then let's see how an F-test would be done manually. So if we take a simple example, let's say we have two samples, like sample 1 and sample 2. So as we have in the board here, so the sample 1 has a variance of 100 and the sample 2 has a variance of 70. So we have the sample size 1 is 61 and then sample size 2 is 21. So now the F-test enables us to check, to validate whether there is a significant difference between the variance of the sample 1 and the sample 2. So here the sample size are different and then we have the variance between those two samples, but in order to prove statistically that there is a difference, we need to use the F-test here. So now what happens is, so the first step in the F statistics is we need to use the variance. We need to divide the variance 1, the variance of the sample 1 by the variance of sample 2, and then the value that we get here would be the calculated F value. So here in this case, when we divide 100 by 70, the value that we get here 1.428 is the F calculated value. So this is the value that will be compared towards the end. So we set aside this value, and then the next step would be to use the degrees of freedom, so which is 1 minus the sample size. So we calculate the degrees of freedom for sample 1 and sample 2, and then we have to determine the alpha value that we want to set. So alpha value is kind of the standard value is 0.05. So in case of F-test, we need to half it, so it would be 0.025. So that would be the alpha value for us. So depending upon the degrees of freedom, which is 60 and 20, and then the alpha value that we are using. So based on that, we use the F table in order to get the F value. So here for this particular combination, the F value would be approximately 2.223. So then what we use is we check the calculated F value and compare it with the F value that we have got from the table. And if the calculated value, the value that we got here, if it is less than this particular value, so then it means that we can reject the null hypothesis. So as you would know, the null hypothesis always states that there is no difference. So the null hypothesis here means that there is no difference in the variance of sample 1 and sample 2. So when we reject the null hypothesis, it means that there is a difference between the variance of sample 1 and sample 2. So this is the typical F-test. So this is what an F-test is used for. It is used to compare the variance between two different samples, two different groups. So this F-test has a variety of use cases across many data science problems. So some of the use cases, like maybe I would want to briefly highlight those use cases, and maybe I will provide some materials and links for you to go through and understand the F-test in detail, in better what would be the various other scenarios where it could be useful. So one of the first use case is the F-test is used in ANOVA. So in ANOVA, F-test is used in order to determine the variability between the groups. So we have two different groups. The variability between these two groups, is it higher as compared to the variability within the groups? Like let's say that we have a group 1 and group 2. What we are doing is we are checking whether the variability between this and this, whether it is higher as compared to the variability between the groups itself. Like we have group 1, there would be some variability within the group 1 as well as within the group 2. So we do check, like if the null hypothesis is, of course, there is no difference, so which means that it's all same. There isn't much difference in the variability, and the alternate hypothesis would be that there is an variability. And the second use case is commonly used in data science problems is it is used in the regression models. So in the regression models, like when you, after building the model, like if you print the summary of the model that you have built, so there would be an F value as well as the linked probability value. So what this says is, so this says that the model that you have built, is it better as compared to a model without any independent variable? So whenever you make a prediction, so what we use is we use some independent variables. For example, if I take I want to predict the maybe rainfall. So what I do is, in order to predict the rainfall, I use some various inputs such as the temperature and so let's say I want to predict the so the rain, like whether it would rain or not for tomorrow. So then what I would do is I would collect some data specific to today, like what is the temperature and how much is the humidity, how much is the wind. So I kind of collect all these independent variables, and then I use all these independent variables in order to make a prediction. So what happens is the F value that you see in the summary of the model says that as compared to a model without any independent variables, which means that it is based on an average. Like if we can state an average, the model that has been built, that is which is using some independent variables, is it better or not? So that's what the F value in the summary of the regression model would tell us. So as compared to and model without any independent variable, whether the model that you have built, is it working better or not? So these are all some of the use cases of an F-test. So there are much more use cases for F-test. So maybe I will provide you some links which you can use to read more about F-test and how it can be used in various other scenarios, which would be very useful, like maybe when you work on the actual data science projects. And so that's it for now, and I hope you have learned something new today. If you have learned something new, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you think this might be helpful for any of your friends who is trying to learn data science, please share it with them, and maybe you can try to learn as a team, so there would be some learning, like you can learn from each other as well. That's it for now. See you on the next session. Bye.